coming and is going to share. We are continuing the series of the Bible characters. Anybody remembers which character we did last week? Esther.
So. It was characters of the cross.
Today is characters around the cross.
Gotcha.
Okay, so last week we had Esther. Today we're going to talk about characters around the cross.
Hi everybody. This is too weird because there's not one person in the inner. Could we maybe move to this row? I promise I'm not that scared. You guys, maybe the three of you, the other one. I'm not going to call on anybody. I don't know anyone's name. You don't need to worry. So I feel very humbled and blessed that Uncle Samir asked me to come. I've known Uncle Samir for probably 15 or 20 years now. When I graduated college, we went on a trip with the Long Island Church. I'm sure you remember it.
That was my first Egypt trip, guys.
Yeah.
I got the idea from Abuna Girgis.
Yeah.
First trip that I
So we went to Egypt, and Uncle Samir was with us, and it was really a great time. He'd wake us up in the morning screaming bonjour. And it was just yeah. So I feel very blessed now that I could be in front of you guys. My name is Emo. I just so you have like a little bit of background about myself. 34, so I'm kind of removed from college, but not so too far removed. But still kind of removed. I feel very old still in a room full of college kids. Married. I have a daughter who's 1 year old who we kind of like very much so far. So we're going to talk about characters around the cross, and as we get ready for Easter, we're only I think about a month away now. It's good to get in the mindset of thinking about the death and resurrection of Christ and what it was all about, and maybe try to get in the right frame of mind. So Uncle Samir, I think, gave me the option of a few people to talk about, and I picked the centurion. Does anyone know basically, I want to go through, and hopefully you guys can help me out here, because I don't want to do too much talking, and try to maybe, if you guys are willing to engage, talk a little bit. So does anyone know a little bit or anything about the story about the centurion who was at the cross with Christ? Anything? Yeah.
San Longinos? Is that it?
Is that right? I don't even know his name. I know he's a saint.
He became a saint.
Yeah, he definitely became a saint. Yeah. Wow. Do you want to switch places? Anything else? From the story in the Bible, we've all seen the Passion of the Christ, or been here on Good Friday, read all the Gospels, right? Does anyone remember from the story involving the Roman soldier that was there at Christ's crucifixion? Yeah.
He was blind in one eye, and the water that came out of the side of when it was pierced.
Yeah.
Gave him sight of partially.
So yes, so let's take it back a little bit. So he was the soldier, whether here in the gospel, who pierced the side of Christ after he was dead to make sure he was dead. Right? They were breaking the legs of the other thieves, and they didn't break the legs of Christ. They pierced his side, and water and blood came out. And then he said, "Truly, this was the Son of God." So this is a Roman soldier, not Jewish background, doesn't really understand the prophets and what was going on with the Hebrews and all the prophecies about Christ. But he pierces the side of Christ, and then he says, "Truly, this is the Son of God. This was the Son of God." So I want to think about all the different events that he witnessed that day that led him to, after seeing the death of Christ and piercing his side, believing that this truly was the Son of God. So if we go back to the morning, right? We know that there was trials going back and forth with Pilate and with Herod and back and forth, right? What are they going to do with Christ? Do they want to crucify him? Don't they want to? So by the time they brought him to Pilate, I think the second time, it was morning, the soldiers are there, he's probably there witnessing it. And he's seeing all of the Jews who were supposed to be Christ's people shouting, crucify him, crucify him, crucify him. Pilate's reluctant, right? He doesn't really want, he's like, I don't know. His wife has told him, I had a dream. You don't want anything to do with this man. Stay away from this man. So Pilate doesn't really want to do anything. But the people are very insistent they should crucify him. And this is a guy who probably has done hundreds of crucifixions, right? This is his job. He's a Roman soldier. So while it's a very powerful, impactful story for us, of course, maybe at the time, I don't know whether anyone who was part of the regular Roman army recognized this as anything too special. Something was going on. It was Passover, right? So all the Jews were in Jerusalem. They're causing a lot of trouble. So they're a little bit nervous. But it's otherwise just another crucifixion. Pilate and Jesus have an intimate conversation during this period, and maybe the soldiers there witnessing it, right? And Pilate says, what should I do with you? What are we going to do? And Christ's response is to say nothing, right? He stays silent. And Pilate says to him, don't you want to defend yourself? Don't you realize that I have the authority to crucify you or release you? And Christ says to him, well, the only authority you have is the one that I've given you. It's already been given to you from God. So he's talking kind of funny. There's a Roman soldier maybe watching this, overhearing. It's not 100% normal what's happening, right? It's not your everyday crucifixion, so maybe he's paying a little bit closer attention. Jesus gets scourged, right? They're like whipping him, treating him poorly before crucifixion. People are cursing at him, spitting him, right? And this guy's watching all of this. Then he can't even carry his cross, right? They start to say, okay, we're going to crucify him. They march him down to Golgotha, and Jesus can't even carry his cross. They have somebody there who has to help him. He's too weak. So Christ just looks very feeble, right? He just looks like very weak in all of this. Then we get to the cross. They divide up his clothes. As one of the Roman soldiers, he gets part of the clothes, and he gets to raffle off the tunic that he has for him, right? So he's sort of just doing whatever. This is like a poor man who he has no idea about. And yet, after the death and the piercing, he says, truly this man was the Son of God. So I'm trying to think, and hopefully you guys can help me because I don't know all the answers. How did we get from this person who was a soldier in the Roman army, whose job was to crucify people, who witnessed Christ as probably in his weakest from the outside looking in? How does he get to this man was the Son of God? Truly, this man was the Son. What else happened that day could have gotten there? And there's a story that he was blind, and there was a miracle that happened when the blood and water came out. Okay, that could be part of it, but what else?
That's not in the Bible.
It's not. It's tradition, like a story. Yeah. So if we just take the facts of the Bible and the story that happened, how does it make sense that he would pierce his side and then be like, wow, truly this man was the Son of God? What happened to make him, who was not even a Jew, right, whose job is just to crucify people, come to that conclusion? And if you think about how everyone viewed Christ that day, he is not looking very strong. Any guesses or ideas or thoughts?
All the ominous signs that kind of occurred right after.
Sure, I think that's probably part of it, right? There was the sky went black, there was earthquakes, the dead was rising, right? There's all that stuff is in the Bible that's happening. So I agree that's probably part of it. What else? What made Christ's crucifixion, do you think, different than all the other ones that he had probably presided over or done? What was unique to what was happening with Christ? In addition to, obviously, miracles.
I think because he wanted to be crucified.
He wanted to be crucified. What do you mean by that?
Like he was not resisting.
Okay. He was submitting himself.
Yeah, he was not resisting.
That's good. Yeah. I'm sure lots of people who he had crucified in the past were very resistant, right? What else? What about what Christ did or said that day would make you think that he was an incredible man? Or not just a man, truly the Son of God? Yes. Sorry, what's your name?
Marina.
Maria.
He said, Father, please forgive them, for they don't know what they do. And like he said, like he was in a position where he would probably be cursing or like being very hateful towards the soldiers that were crucifying him, but he's not being like kind and forgiving towards them.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. I think probably in all this man's history of crucifixions, there was not someone there who was praying for the people who were crucifying him. Right? I am 100% sure that played a big part in how the centurion viewed him. Right? These people did nothing but mock and spit and curse, and not just the people who were crucifying him. Jesus is being made fun of and cursed by one of the thieves on the who's hanging up next to him, right? And his response to that was, "Father, forgive them. They don't know what they're doing." When he's being led to the cross, right, and all the women are crying, he says, "Don't cry for me. Cry for yourselves. Like, this is about you." So everything that was supposed to be when someone is on death row or dying or, about to be put to death, you think, what are they thinking about? Themselves, right? And Christ is looking out and he's thinking about all the other people. What does he say? Father, forgive them, they know what to do. He says to John and Mary, he's worried about his mother and one of his disciples, right? He said, this is your son. To Mary and to John, he says, this is your mother, right? He's worried about the other people around him. And I think that what we view from the outside as weakness, this weak person who is getting made fun of, who's getting spit on, and who's being put to death, the centurion saw that as strength, right? As the opposite. And that's what Christ does. He sort of flips on its head what is weakness and what is strength. Because is it strength to be in that position and say, you know what? Guess what? I know all what's going to happen. You're all going to hell. I'm going to be fine, right? Is that strength? No, not at all. But to take on all of that burden, that pain, and then be thinking about others, the centurion saw that strength. He saw how much Christ was different in that moment, and it led him to this place where he saw who Christ really was, truly the Son of God, right? And I think, as Myrna mentioned, the centurion goes on in church tradition to become a saint who was martyred, who didn't, after Christ's death, didn't go back to his life of just, I'm gonna now go back to being a Roman soldier, and the next person that needs to be crucified, I'm gonna crucify them. I saw this amazing thing. I witnessed a miracle. This person who I now recognize as God has somehow died and entered my life, and I witnessed this amazing thing, but now it's time for me to get back onto my own life, right? No. He took what he saw and he made it part of his life, and he became really, as the church tradition is, like a really great saint in the church who spread the good news, the gospel of Christ to Gentiles like himself. And I think it's such a perfect story, like his story, the centurion's story, is such a perfect story for Lent, because like as the church I think tries to hammer home during these few weeks, you can see it through the Sunday readings. People meet Christ, and then they recognize his strength, his power, he does something for them. And then they either witness to that, or in some cases, they just go back to living their lives. You guys know what I'm talking about? Like, we know all the Sundays of Lent, right? So like, what sort of follows that path where somebody who's not even a Jew, or kind of a fake Jew, witnesses Christ, experiences strength, and then uses that to be a witness for the rest of her life. The Samaritan woman. Yeah. Right? The Samaritan woman. Same thing with the man born blind, right? Somebody who meets Christ, has a miracle happen to him, and then becomes a witness of what happened. On the other side, we have the paralyzed man. Somebody who meets Christ, has a miracle, witnesses the strength of Christ, and then goes kind of back to just living his life. And I think we are challenged in this Lent to look for God. You know, I mean, this is what Lent's about. You try to take away some of the distractions that we have in our life. We look for God, and I think if we look hard enough, I believe we'll see his strength in our life in one way or another. We'll see the power of the cross. And then what we do with that after, it's kind of up to us. It's up to us to stop, listen and look for him, and then if we find him, what we do with it after. And I really think that's sort of what happened in this centurion's life. He could have easily just went about his day doing his normal thing. It's his everyday life. Like for us, it's like crucifixion's a big deal. This is all he did. Crucify people, crucify people, crucify people, right? Could have easily just went through what happened with Christ. Oh, it's kind of weird. It's getting dark. It's kind of shaky. I bet that's just a coincidence. I don't know. I don't really think anything's going on. I got to go home and get some pizza. No. So he stopped and saw and looked for what is Christ's strength. And I enjoy the season of Lent. You know, it's funny, like, as we get to, like, February, and it's Jonah's fast, and Lent's coming up, I start to feel, like, a little bit of, like, oh, it's going to be hard, I'm dreading it a little, right? But then we get there, and it always goes by faster than I think, and I always don't make as much of it as I want to, and all of a sudden it's Easter, and it's like, oh, wow, it's like 50 days, and everyone's partying. So I think we need to try to, while we have this next month, hold on to the period where we can just focus on God a little bit more. And I promise you, if we put in the time and the effort, we'll see the strength and the strength and the power of the cross in our lives, the way the centurion saw it. And then, as we get to Easter and everything, how do we hold on to that and make it part of our life, really, truly part of our life going forward? It's not an easy thing, but it's something that I think we're focused, or that God is focused on delivering to us every Lent. And no matter where you are in your journey, in your spiritual journey, right? No one is ever there. No one's ever like, I'm good, I don't need to do anything anymore, right? So there's always more that we can get to so that we have a true experience with God. And time is running out. It's only 4 more weeks, I think. And I think about everything that the centurion witnessed, and if I were in his shoes, what would my conclusion be at the end of the day? And I don't know the answer. I wish I could say for sure the answer is I would have pierced his side and said, truly this was the Son of God. So I think it's very hard to look at somebody who is just really as low as you can get in life and think of that as a good thing. But he saw what was not there, like what was not evident, what was not like blaring in front of him. When you sit and think about the story, it's like, wow, that is strength. He was up there with people spitting at him, making fun of him, thinking about them. And that's incredible. If you ever have been in a situation where you were accused of something that you didn't do, like your reaction is like, how dare you? Like, how dare you say that I did this horrible thing that I didn't do? And Christ was there saying, all of the things that we all have done that are awful, that he never did, he's taking the blame for it. And on top of that, saying, Father, forgive them, for they don't know what they do. And when you think about it that way, then it's easy to say, wow, truly this was the Son of God. Right? Like, wow. And I think you just need a different viewpoint, and you need to be looking for that. I think sometimes God will make himself evident in a very heavy-handed way in our lives, like really strongly, but most of the time it's subtle, and if you're just breezing through life and not caring, and you're just living your day after day, you go to school, you go to class, you take a test, you get something to eat, you go home, you play Fortnite. Is that what the kids do these days? Fortnite? See, I'm still cool. You just live your life over and over and over again, and you never think about anything. You never think about, like, you never take a moment to stop and say, what is really happening? What's going on? Like, how is my life going? What direction am I heading? You know, another really important part of Lent is the prodigal son story, right? Where he's living his life and he realizes, like, he stops and is like, what is happening? Like, I need to stop and contemplate for a second what is happening. And life comes at you so fast now, especially as a 19, 20, 21-year-old. It's like you jump from the next thing to the next thing, and part of it is like these things, like I'm way addicted, right? Like you don't have time to think because you're like, oh, Instagram post. Oh, the FCC has fined robocallers. Oh, right? Like I have a million notifications on my phone right now. I had to put it down for 10 minutes. So where are we finding time to stop and think during this period so that we can have the eyes that the centurion had? Because if you don't stop and think, you won't have those eyes. You just keep running like a gerbil in a wheel, hamster in a wheel, whatever. Gerbil, hamster, same thing. You just keep going. And then the next thing you know, you're 34 years old, you graduated college like 15 years ago, and you're looking at kids, and you're like, wow, how did this happen to me already? I'm just kidding, talking to myself. So I really have, yeah, please.
Did you graduate college when you were 20?
21, sorry, 13 years old. Wow. I think that's normal, right? I think that's regular. That's regular time. Yeah, there you go. I didn't skip any years. I did it in the normal time. But I think so. If I'm trying to message something to you guys, it's we're lucky to have the next month where we can try. And the church sets up so many services, events, everything for us. Try to tune down maybe some of the noise in our life and try to look for God's strength and his power in our life. And look for things that don't necessarily make sense as strength, right? You might not think the picture of a cross is strength, but it's strength. And you may not think the particular situation you're in is strength, but it is. You might not think whatever is going on in your life can be a source of strength, but for sure it can be, and it's coming from God. And I think when you tune down some of the noise and distraction, that's the only way you'll be able to see that. And then, if we're lucky enough to see that, how we have to hold on to that and really make make a difference in how we lead our lives going forward. And the centurion is the perfect example of that, right? This guy who was a professional killer, just an executioner, sees God on the cross, recognizes his strength, and becomes a saint who preaches the good news to Gentiles, right? Like total change in his life. So that's mostly what I have. I don't know if there's anything else you guys want to add, or Uncle Samir, if you have something to add from that.
I always question, what if I didn't see?
Like I wasn't there.
I mean, he saw the earthquakes, he saw things different. He saw water and blood that is very unusual. He saw things that are very unusual that were happening. But we don't see that.
That's a good question.
Yeah, we don't see something miraculous. Especially if the story that melody is true. That's, I mean,
it's
who if that happens to you, who is not gonna believe?
Well, like we have the paralyzed man, right? Who
Yeah,
Jesus
but these are
heals,
all,
and he doesn't really do anything with it. And I think, well, go ahead.
I was going to say that a lot of people saw the same things.
Right.
And they didn't believe. So not necessarily that. Like even the disciples. Think of the disciples. They were fed like 2 times, where he had the multitude and he fed them. And then one time he was hungry. They were hungry and they didn't have food with them. And they're just like, do you have eyes and not see? Do you have ears and not hear? I fed more than I fed thousands of people before, and you're just worried about your food right now. So
It's a good question. I think if we think, and maybe I'm wrong, but I think if we think that if we were there, it would have been somehow different than now. I don't think that's how it is. I think if we're able to see God in our life now, which I think we can if we're looking for it, I think that's almost as powerful as the earthquake that happened, right?
What even if this is not happening? يعني I just want to play the...
No, please, yeah.
I mean, a lot of us youth, يعني actually we see God being given. God, يعني I حتى even normal small things that I can see Him in, it's not happening in my life, because my life is all tribulations and difficulties, and where are you, God?
I think the problem, this is my own opinion, not like sanctioned by anyone or anything. The problem is we fill our lives with so much, there's no room for us to see God. Like I was talking about before, like the amount of time we spend on devices, myself included, like the first to be a victim of this. The amount of time we spend on devices, on screens, on just like, we go from thing to thing to thing. I gotta get to practice, I gotta get to class, I gotta study, I have a big test, my mom wants me home, I gotta make kushari, I gotta do this, I gotta do that, right? Like, we don't stop for a second, and that's why we don't see. I think that's the real problem. And I think more so than ever, when I talk about seeing God, I think more so than ever, it's in those tribulations than it is in, wow, I got 100 on that test, thank you God. That to me is not really how it works. I can speak for my own life. The strongest, whenever my relationship with God is the strongest, things in my actual life are probably going the worst. I think it's tribulation itself that draws us closer to God. So it's a matter of looking for it, though. And if we're only worried about the next thing and ourselves and how many likes and how many comments and like that, you're never going to stop for a second to even consider God until it's like, oh, where's God? What happened? Why am I, why am I failing out of school? Why did this horrible thing happen? Why did this person who is very close to me get this terminal illness? Right? Like, And it's only in those moments where something like that happens where you're forced to stop, right? You're forced to stop and forget about everything else and sort of focus on God and then grow a little. I don't know. I really think a big problem is our short attention spans and how much we have coming at us every day. Like there's just so much. I'm not even, I'm older than you and I still have that habit. Does that make sense? Yeah.
I think also to address your question, Uncle Samir, like maybe we need to stop looking for big things and start like paying attention to like smaller things. So, advice that like one of my father confessions gave me was that like we don't think about it, but when you wake up in the morning, you don't think about the fact that you woke up that morning. Like when you breathe during the day, your heart is beating, your body's working, you're thinking, you're doing all these things, and like we take that for granted because like that's really given to us. But like if you really sit down and think about all the processes and like things that happen in your body just to keep you alive, like throughout the day, or like
They can go wrong any minute.
it can, yeah, it can,
It does,
yeah,
too,
it
to
can
lots of
go
people.
wrong.
Littlest things
Yeah.
tells the biggest amount.
It can go wrong any minute. So the fact that everything is working so well every day, and like you drive your car and you didn't get in an accident and you got to where you need to go safely, like it's just small things that like if you want to see God in them, you can, or if you want to take them for granted and say, oh, this is normal, you also can do that.
Yeah. And I think that goes to the idea of stopping and just thinking a little bit and contemplating on your life a little bit, and even to the blood that's pumping through your heart, right? But we have very little time, and I think it's a generational issue. We have very little time for thought or depth anymore, and everything is just shallow on its face. And that's why I like Lent, because it forces me to be deep. It forces me to like stop and think and contemplate. Where it's when you're living your life, you're just doing your thing, you're going about your day, you're just trying to get to the next day, and that's it. Yeah.
Yeah, so there's this parable, not in the Bible, but some guy named C.H. Chesterton or C.K. something.
G.K.
So-
Chesterton.
Yeah, that guy.
Yeah.
So he was speaking about two guys. They walked by a garden, and like there were like these beautiful flowers that were growing among like thorns. So the guy, they both looked at the garden, and one of them was like, "How are these flowers growing among these thorns?" So one of them was like, "I don't know. I haven't seen a gardener come by, but I do see footsteps." So they were like, "That doesn't make any sense to me." So both men decided to sit down and watch. And as they watched the garden, they never saw anyone come and actually fill those footsteps, but the footsteps are still there, and the flowers are still among the thorns. So when it comes down to it, there is a lot of like bad and like pain and suffering, but there's also a lot of beauty. So when it comes down to it, it's a decision you have to make. There are footsteps, and there's little hints that are gonna show you God, but you won't really see them get full with like God Himself walking through them. So that's where the role of faith comes in.
Yeah, and again, I'm going to keep going back to this. The reason that those people came to those conclusions was because they stopped and sat and watched the flower bed for a while. And I don't think we're stopping and sitting and thinking about our lives. And I don't mean you have to become a hermit, monk, and go move in the mountains for the rest of your life, but to take 10, 15 minutes of your day somehow and just be calm and still and not be checking your phone or not be thinking about anything, right? Like school or anything like that. It's hard. It's very hard. It sounds easy. It's 10 minutes out of the day that has how many hours? But it's very difficult when you try to do it. And it's like, well, why can't I do this? It's because I'm constantly just being bombarded with things all day, and you want to get to the next thing always. So again, if we do anything over the next month, as we lead up to Easter, I wish that we would stop and contemplate and think about how God might be working in our lives. And then I believe we will be rewarded with seeing God more. Because it's a problem we all have. I don't really feel God in my life. I don't see God in my life. All these bad things are happening. There's wars here. I don't know. Trump is president. Just kidding. I'm not apolitical. But we're not thinking about anything except for what's thrown in our faces. So I pray for myself and for you guys that we can be better the next month and have it make a real lasting impact on us, like it had on the Samaritan woman and on the man born blind and on the centurion. Thanks, guys.